Welcome back, y'all, to another episode 71 of Spittin Hoops. We're back today with kind of like a fantasy episode, but also a trade deadline special because the NBA never stops. Obviously, we just recorded a podcast yesterday talking about Luka, Anthony Davis, and such. But today we have Jason on, and we're going to be talking about De'Aaron Fox and about the rest of the fantasy season. So, Jason, how are you feeling? Thanks for coming on.
Doing
Welcome,
good.
Jason.
Thanks for having me on, boys. It's good to be back.
Anthony, how are you feeling?
Just a nuts day, man. Probably the biggest trade deadline day, 24-hour span in history, right? Wake up. Jason, want to hear your quick thoughts too on the Luka trade, because Max and I covered damn near every angle of it. But then later in the night, some of us were busy doing other stuff while we found out about the news, so we weren't able to find out in real time. But sheesh, what a 3-team trade where it feels like San Antonio really came out as the winner on this. Between the Kings, the Spurs, and the Bulls. So very exciting. Want to kind of jump on into that. But Jason, what is your take on such a huge trading day in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean it's wild. It felt like a little bit like our fantasy basketball deadline, where deals were just coming in hot. A bunch of teams were involved, which is, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. It gives us something to talk about. It definitely changes the landscape of the league. Yeah, I haven't heard your guys' piece on the Luka trade, but that was just, I mean, an absolute shocker, as I'm sure you guys covered. And then, also a lot to talk about with the Fox deal as well. But yeah, I mean, I'll leave it to you guys to kind of, spearhead those discussions. Do we want to go into those deals right now, or should we switch over to the fantasy side of things?
No, let's talk about the deals really quick. I mean, so really quick, Fox and Jordan McLaughlin to San Antonio, right? The Kings get Zach LaVine, Sidi Sissoko. They get a 2025 first round pick via the Hornets that's lottery protected. If it does not convey this year, it becomes 2 second round picks. After that, it's the 2027 first round pick from the Spurs, 2031 first round pick from the T-Wolves, and then some other second round picks. Bulls, they get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 first round pick back this year, so they can tank. Kind of like an interesting trade all around. It's like, doesn't feel like Zach LaVine went for a ton, but also I think the Bulls probably really valued getting their own pick back, so they can they like expect a Vucevic trade coming up now, right? But I kind of feel like the Kings didn't get a ton. I don't know.
Yeah, Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought too much about this deal in particular. I was kind of still wrapping my head around the Luka trade when this all went down. But I will say that Fox Wemby combo is going to be really fun to watch. It'll be interesting. I saw some projections on what the Spurs, kind of some of their lineup configurations moving forward, what they might run, and it seems like they have a lot of versatility now. They can get some size in there next to Wemby, or they can kind of get a bunch of guards, forwards in there next to Wemby. So that configuration will be really interesting to see how that kind of all plays out. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the other two squads that were involved, I think that I agree with you, Max. I kind of thought we'd be seeing a little bit more in terms of the return for LaVine, but he's had his ups and downs as a player and staying healthy, so that might have also factored into it a little bit.
Jason, the fact that you immediately went to the Spurs, I think just speaks volume about what these three franchises mean. The Bulls and the Kings the Kings for much longer, but the Bulls just for the last 10 years, at least 15, 20 for the Kings, have just been mired in mediocrity over and over and over again. And it's these kind of deals where, I didn't see the Kings. I saw that Hornets pick, that first round pick, and I said, wow, that is an amazing pick to get back. They're terrible, until I learned out that it was top 14 protected. So it's just going to be 2 second round picks. And because neither of these teams really have an extensive history of great deep draft polls, I don't really know what you're doing here. I think the return back for the Bulls is really tough. But to your point, I mean, Jason, you know this better than anybody, with the Lakers as well. Teams just fleecing other teams immediately. So, I mean, the Spurs definitely got a great deal back and just did not have to give too much up. And I think this makes the Spurs very, very scary in the West, especially for such a low seed.
I'm kind of with the Bulls though. I kind of think the Bulls got a pretty good deal here. Like I'm not sure is anyone offering 2 firsts for that Zach LaVine contract? And if you're not getting like 2 firsts back, you might as well just get your own pick back and then have enough reason to blow it up. Like finally, we've been asking the Bulls to blow it up, right? So I kind of feel like they're just putting themselves in the spot to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like the Kings really valued getting an asset like Zach LaVine back while getting these firsts. But I feel like you have a year and a half left of Fox. Could you have not played this out a little longer? I don't know. I think they didn't want any drama. Once this Fox shit started going down, they were like, we need to move on. Like I kind of feel like they could have got more, but I don't think the Kings wanted to deal with it. But this is like a top 3 king of all time, right? And you're like dealing him for a package like this. It feels a little rough. I don't know. Maybe there's that.
Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think what do the Kings do from here? I mean, they still have some pieces. Obviously, still have Sabonis there. So you're not going full scale rebuild right now. I'm just not really quite sure what the path forward is for them.
They want to keep buying. Have you seen this? They want to keep adding. So I don't really.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I mean, who though? Who do they go after?
Yeah,
it's funny because I don't think the Spurs are going to buy now. Like I think this is like the Spurs move. Like I don't think they're doubling down. I think this is going to be like this is a long-term move for them, right? I don't think they're going to double down in any like strong way before the deadline is done, right? But like the Kings, and I honestly think the Spurs could because they could be really good now. But the Kings are going to double down on this roster, and it feels. Isn't this team just like the Bulls from like 4 years ago? And instead of Vucevic, you have Sabonis.
Yeah,
like I don't know.
That's exactly who they are with DeRozan there.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of rough?
Crazy.
Like I don't know.
So funny.
You got like Malik Monk instead of like Lonzo Ball, and then you got like I don't know. You got like Devin Carter instead of like Caruso. It's like
right. Although Malik Monk's having a great year, so. Honestly, him is kind of your lead guard. I mean, him and LaVine both, but like that's honestly not terrible. He's opened some eyes this year, so who knows? It'll be interesting to see how that team comes together.
It feels like the Kings are just hoping for 2 playoff games in their home arena.
Yeah,
that's the vibe that this is against the Thunder. Like this is what they're looking for. This is this is the worst spot to be in. Not to be a pessimist, because this will be a fun League Pass team. Super fun watching LaVine play. Super fun watching DeRozan. To your point, Malik Monk is awesome to watch play. It's a fun team.
Yeah,
like very low, very high floor. But you said it well. Who else is out there, and who do you go for?
Yeah.
Luka Doncic is not walking through that door.
Yeah. Okay, theoretically though, shouldn't this team just like sell off, like sale like their whole team? Like they're in a perfect spot to be set up like the Jazz or like the Thunder. Like if they fired, like since Fox left and Fox wasn't going to extend, you just traded him for some assets. You could have traded him for more, but if you like flip LaVine now and then you sold Sabonis, you could literally have like. You could have finally be set up with like a huge future. Like the Kings have been building off of like mid teams after mid teams. This team is going nowhere. Like in my opinion, like I don't know. I kind of feel like they should should have taken advantage to like sell the whole team. The thing is, Monty McNair, if he does that, he's getting fired because Vivek is like just wants to win for with a mid team.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, they have a couple pieces there. They have a couple young pieces that are promising, right? I mean, they have Keon Ellis, they have Keegan Murray, who's kind of taken a little bit. He hasn't progressed, I think, as well as we kind of hope, but he still has a future. Devin Carter. So it's not like they have they have to fully revamp their whole roster. I mean, they have a couple pieces to your point that they could get value from, and you'd love to see them kind of build around some of those younger guys.
I don't know. But now it just feels like they're just going to be the 6th seed instead of the 8th, or like the 10th seed instead of the 12th. Like, I don't know. Honestly, are they going to be any better? Like they just trade their best player. Yeah.
Right.
Like they're going to miss the playoffs probably.
It's a very lateral move.
Yeah.
What do you guys think is the Spurs upside now with, you add Fox.
Oh my Lord.
What's the upside? We're talking this year for that team.
Very high.
Second round.
You don't think they can make a West Finals?
I'm not that bullish personally.
No, but I don't think it's like that crazy because if they're like the 6 seed and if they're the 6 seed, they play the Grizz who are the 3 seed, and then they play like the Rockets who are like the 2 seed, like in back-to-back series, and you don't have to play the Thunder. You don't have to play the Thunder or the
Or the
Nuggets.
Nuggets.
I think that's plausible.
I mean, to your point,
There would be tough
yeah,
series. Like even
yeah,
though like they would still have to beat the Rockets and the Grizzlies in that made up scenario I just gave you. But like
right.
they in both those series they'd have two of the three best players.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Pacers last year, so I guess that is definitely feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like him a little more than you, Anthony. I'm a little bit more on Max's side. I think a little bit on this one, just because I don't think the West is all that strong. I mean, you have teams that, other than OKC, they're legit, obviously. But Wemby has a legit chance to just wreck a series in the playoff.
Yeah.
And now he has a sidekick to run with him, and Fox is also, we've seen him produce on big stages before. So I think that combo, and they have a supporting cast too. They definitely have some guys that can step in. Castle, some supporting players, Sohan, guys like that are good role players. I definitely think they could. Would I put money on them in a series against the Rockets or the Mavs or something? Maybe not, but I could definitely see them sneaking a series or two against teams like that, and potentially making a pretty good run in the playoffs.
I feel like the Mavs might be a team that they can kind of expose. Like you're gonna stretch out their two center setup, their two big setup pretty hard with Wemby, and then Fox is just attacking their guards. Like I don't know. Like anyways, I guess I'm agreeing with you. You could talk me into them winning a lot of these series, basically.
Right.
Either way, I would love to see them in the playoffs. Wemby in the playoffs. Like, let's start it now for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
God help us all.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Jason, you better get that ring soon, buddy.
Dude, that's what I'm saying, man. I'm saying the league doesn't have too much longer before that man just fully takes over.
Yeah.
Dude. And he's gonna have De'Aaron Fox for only like 5 years, bro.
Yeah.
They got the Tim Duncan, they got the Tony Parker. Like
that's so real.
They just need a wing now. They need their Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, and I'm a big Tim Duncan guy. He's obviously a legend, but I mean, even throwing his name around Wemby doesn't quite seem like enough on some days. I mean,
wow.
Not saying that Wemby's obviously legacy.
Yo, you're right
Duncan, but like in terms of just like pure dominance, Wemby's just like he's different.
Dude, it's so stark, bro. Dude, the stuff where like the people like the thing where people turn around when they see Wemby in the paint is like one of the most jarring like NBA phenomenons like that there is. He's the only person I feel like that it happens to. Like I don't know.
Yeah. So hypothetically, I think I agree with you, Max, that Spurs, they might be done. That might be the big splash. Mm-hmm. But if they could go out and get another guy, or a pickup. It doesn't have to be a star, but who would you like to see them go get to kind of add to what they already have? Or do they not need someone? Or are they kind of set?
I kind of like their setup, right? So like the thing is the CP3 Castle Fox thing, that's a lot of guards, especially for a team like that has also, but the thing is, I don't know. They have like a 3 guard setup there, and then they're gonna have like Barnes, Keldon, Sochan, Vassell, 4-wing setup between the small forward, power forward slots, and I think they really like Basti at the center slot with like backing up Wemby. I think the team's pretty good. Like, where are we supposed to upgrade? Like, I'd love to just keep your assets and try to get a huge wing. Like, try to get a goated wing at some point. But like, what in the interim? I don't know. What do you think? Like, I don't know if there's anyone that springs to mind. I don't
don't have anyone off the top of my head, but like I do think they're I do think they're missing like one piece. I think they're missing. You're right. Like a wing scorer could really like a consistent wing scorer. I like Vassell a lot. I just think in the playoffs you'd like a good shooter. Honestly, I don't know. This might be crazy, but if someone with like Austin Reeves becomes available now that Luka is on the Lakers, like someone like that would be, I think, a really interesting fit as a kind of a scoring forward that can still play make. That
They could have had him.
player.
They could have had him when he was restricted free agent too. It was like the fit was right there, man.
That's right. Yeah, they could have.
Yeah. That's actually a great call, Jason. That's actually great. Like a Malik Monk, like kind of like a Malik Monk, like a secondary. And now we're just recreating the Kings backcourt now. But
Right.
But like still.
On that vein, if they were able to get the salaries right in Phoenix, want to blow it up and get Devin Booker to run on that timeline, like that would probably be it for the rest of the league, though.
Yeah.
Kobe White, though, on like a more attainable player, like you wanted Kobe White at shooting guard next to Fox, maybe, and then because Fox is such a good point of attack defender, frankly, that I'm fine with that.
Good problems to have,
dude. God help us, man. I don't want to talk about the Spurs anymore. Actually, I want to talk about Wemby. I'm not on Glazed Wemby, but the Spurs are gonna give me nightmares, man. Do you guys want to move on to the fantasy things? Is there anything else you guys want to highlight on that trade side?
Yeah, I mean, you guys already talked about the Luka trade. I mean, I think we could go into that, but I don't want to repeat that if you guys already.
Well, hit us with your quick thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, real quick. I mean, this might be a hot take, but I was thinking about this, and I don't necessarily know that either team got that much better. And that might be a crazy take, but I don't know. I mean, obviously Luka, generational type player. He's going to be playing with Braun and the Lakers, but we'll see. It remains to be seen how. I think that'll work, but we'll see how quickly it works, right? Like Luka's coming back, hopefully soon. Obviously has never played with those guys, never played with a player like Braun. We'll see how quickly that works. I'm a little skeptical that that's going to be just a seamless fit right away. So I guess my take in the short term is that I don't, and AD, let's forget his long-term outlook for, AD versus Luka. Let's forget that. Let's talk just this year. AD's he's a monster, right? He's a beast. He's a game changer. He adds something to that team in terms on both sides of the ball that I think will be missed. I mean, they might make another move, but you go from AD to Jackson Hayes. And I know you obviously are upgrading elsewhere, but I think that's going to be, a significant impact for them on both sides of the ball. And then the Mavs too. I mean, it's just like, obviously, the reverse of what I just said, sort of applies to the Mavs. They add this two-way rim protector, one of the best offensive centers in the league. But I just don't know how if that raises their ceiling, right? Like they had a great run last year with the squad they had, and now you add a guy that is a top 10 player in the league, but you subtract an MVP candidate, and there's not as much sort of shot creation and playmaking there as you do with the Lakers with Braun. So I could go on for a while, but short answer is fascinating trade, a lot of different ways this could go, and I just I have a hard time seeing either team taking off after this deal, at least year one. I mean, we forecasted in the future, and the calculations might change, but just for this year, having to sort of totally change your team identity this late in the year is tough, and I'll be interested to see how that happens.
Yeah, I actually agree with like everything you said. I think both teams are like, the ceilings are lower. If you're the Lakers, you just do it because it's Luka, right? It figures out the next 10 years of your franchise. It's not about this year necessarily. And honestly, this year they do probably get worse, or definitely get worse in my opinion. But it's just,
you're absolutely right. This was not a trade that was made for this year at all. Like this was, this is franchise changing deals, but I just it kind of goes back to our earlier point that the West, it's wide open, and you throw the Spurs against either of those teams, and I could see the Spurs, taking a series against those teams just based on the fact that it's going to take a while for the Lakers and Mavs to gel with their new pieces.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with the notion that Luka is a long-term move for sure. And if you're the Lakers, you say yes, thank you to any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I kind of do like. I don't know. I don't know if you watched the Knicks Lakers game, Jason, but AD wasn't playing, and actually wasn't able to watch it either. But they poured it on at the end of the game. And I do think that this does elevate the Lakers ceiling, and I could totally see them make some noise in the playoffs this year with Luka coming back. And I saw their championship odds went up. It didn't go up very high. It went up to like 6%. But I think when they weren't going to win the chip with the team that they had, and now I feel like there's a world where they could do some stuff and finagle their way in. And, the Thunder are terrified of Luka. We saw that last year. So you never know. So, but also with that notion, it's kind of like maybe LeBron has a couple more years where it's, a Larry Bird and, rest in peace, but Len Bias situation where as he ages out, this new guy comes and takes the wheels. This is obviously Luka's franchise now. But to your point, does this make either of these team title contenders? Probably not. But they're both now really tough outs for sure in the West.
Right. And we'll see what the Lakers do. I mean, I think they're not done. I think they're gonna make another move before the deadline would be my prediction.
I could see that.
Even if it's smaller scale, a center would just like do wonders for them. Like a Nick Richards adjacent.
Yeah.
Even that would be good for them. Because also, like, dude, you play next to Luka and LeBron, like Nick Richards is gonna look like a guy a lot better than that,
Yeah,
like exactly. Rob Williams.
Rob Williams.
And that's a really good one.
Maybe Vooch, but
that'll be salaries start stacking a little
salaries bit, and the defense. I think
the defense
is a bit, but he is a big body, and they need that. But
yeah. I mean, offensively, he'd be a really nice fit there.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if it's worth it. Yeah,
right. If like Houston makes a move, like you could see like Steven Adams kind of like falling into like someone's lap, or like maybe like a Jock Landale, even though he's pretty mid, but like
Jay Huff,
even that. Honestly, Jay Huff's not going anywhere. I don't think.
Oh yeah, Grizzlies like him like that.
Yeah, they like him like that.
Yeah, they extended him, right?
Yeah, they give him like 4 years. They give him 4 years.
That deal. Yeah.
Huffington.
All right, with that, anything else on the Luka stuff? I mean, we could talk about that forever, but I still have a lot of thoughts. I still think I literally just think Nico Harrison just really thinks like 80s better than Luka. Like I don't know. I watched the press conference. Like genuinely, like I think that's what he thinks. Like I don't know.
Lying through his teeth.
No, I don't think he's lying. I genuinely think, like somehow, I think he just analyzes the game of basketball and just really thinks that Anthony Davis is like a better basketball player than Luka Doncic. It's like that's just what I've chalked it up to, honestly.
Nice, built different. But yeah, let's get on some fantasy here.
Yes. Okay, so I can lead us into this. So we have a lot of things. We have some things to guide the conversation. But first, I think the most applicable thing that we can provide the viewers is, as we go into like playoff season, that's going to be like the last 4 weeks of the actual, like last 4 to 6 weeks of the actual NBA regular season. But we're getting approaching that time. So we're kind of thinking about players who you can pick up now who are really going to make a difference during that time. Jason, you want to start us off? I think you're the one who probably came with the most names.
I can start us off here. And the way that I focused on this topic was to focus on the trade deadline, the upcoming trade deadline, and kind of think about some players that might have an expanded opportunity should some players that we just mentioned get traded. And it's no guarantee, right? We never know what kind of moves will be had at the trade deadline, but there definitely are a few guys that are more in the trade discussions than others. So I like to, as a fantasy manager, right before the deadline actually happens, pick up a few of the guys that could benefit from some of those trades. So one guy that has been at the top of my list is Donovan Clingan. I know Anthony, you just mentioned Rob Williams. If he gets traded, if DeAndre Ayton gets traded, all of a sudden Clingan stands to gain some opportunity, some minutes. I think that he is, Blazers aren't going anywhere this year. Obviously, they should be trying to develop their young players. They took Clingan really high in the draft, and he's shown that he can produce when given the opportunity. I mean, he hasn't played a ton of minutes this year, but when he's on the court, he's a beast, and especially in leagues that reward blocks, he's particularly valuable because the dude, I think he averages close to 2 blocks a game, and that's in very limited minutes. So if he's playing even 25 minutes a game, 20 to 25, or even a little bit more than that, he's pretty much a surefire 2 block a game kind of guy, and will shoot a really high percentage, will rebound the ball, kind of just does everything you want from a stat accumulation center type dude. So that's definitely a guy that I've actually been holding him off and on for the last couple months, just because I think his upside's pretty high.
It's a good shout there.
Yeah. The one caveat to that is I do think that unless both Rob Will and Ayton get moved, he's not going to have a surefire, like he'll play 30 plus minutes a night. So it is going to take a couple trades there for him to get a clear cut, here's all the usage you can handle kind of situation. But hey, even if one of those guys gets dealt, he's still going to have value just because he's a borderline rosterable guy as the third center there. So if one of those guys gets dealt and he gets, 5 to 10 minutes more a game, he's still going to have value.
I love that pick, Jason. That's a good call. Wait, based on that, do we want to just rotate on some guys?
On topic, I have one. I have a few on topic of that because I think there are a few centers who actually fall under similar situations, and that might not be, that are kind of might be waiver wire adjacent. Interestingly enough, I think Trace Jackson Davis is on the Warriors is one who might get traded. He might get traded for Vucevic. They might trade Looney, so he might have a path to playing time there and a Jimmy Butler deal. If he stays, he's just a mid player, but it's so be it. But I think there's a lot of potential routes there. He might end up with playing time both because he might stay with the Warriors or because he might get traded. If Jackson Hayes is available in your league, pick him up, right?
Unless the Lakers add a center, which they might.
Yeah, that's fair. Another one that I think is kind of really... first of all, Day'Ron Sharpe right now is playing well, so if he's available in your league, start looking at him. But the Nets are just going to keep playing him, and he had a good back end of last year too in a similar situation where they started freeing up minutes for him. So right now, I think he's averaging almost 23 or 24 fantasy points a game over the last 30 days, if I remember correctly. Maybe it might be last 15 days, but so he's already good. So if he's available, start looking at him. But a deep pull that I like, if the 76ers pack it in, Adam Bonner is actually kind of fun.
Oh,
dude, he's actually his fantasy points per minutes played output is actually pretty sweet. And if they just pack it in completely, he might be fun. So that's a 1% call. So I'm just throwing out that name out there.
Jason, you got any other guys off the rip? I got some guys cooking, but
you go with it. You go with a couple of your guys. I got a couple more that I wanna talk about. Right. You go first.
Well, kind of with the Luka trade in mind, I'm just honestly looking at our specific league who's available on waivers. One guy that always interests me is Jared Vanderbilt, especially because of his steals ability. The last few games where he's come back, he has had some great steals games, 3, 2, 4. He doesn't play a lot of minutes. But if the Lakers happen to not make a move before the deadline, and he, as a power forward, he might need to see a lot more time, especially because of his defensive ability. This season, he's only averaging 2.5 points per game, not fantasy points, but points. So if that offensive ceiling can go up, I think that's a potential waiver wire type of guy to look at. For those who are listening, though, keep in mind, Jason is firmly in the hunt for our league's championship, whereas Max and I are kind of in this middle kind of coasting area, trying not to potentially get relegated.
I'm not coasting. I'm gonna get relegated.
I think you're fine. But another guy that's surprising to see is actually Nick Richards right now. Is on the waivers, so your boy just claimed him. So we'll see if I get him. But I think he's clearly the best player for centers on Phoenix, and I think that's a guy that you want to pick up if you have that ability. And then other than that, the other guy that was kind of popping up was potentially, I think Max Christie had some pretty good games for the Lakers before he got traded, and now with him going to Dallas, that backcourt doesn't have a lot of depth. And I could totally see him coming in, splitting minutes with Klay Thompson and potentially getting some run there. So those are some of the guys that you might want to check out.
Yeah, I like those. It's funny you mentioned Nick Richards because I actually just dropped him is the reason he's on the wire. And I like him too. But
yeah, the team's too good.
Well, yeah, I had to pick up one of the guys that we just talked about. I had to pick up Donovan Clingan, so I had to.
Oh, nice.
It was tough. I went back and forth. I was like, all right, Nick Richards definitely has a more surefire role. I mean, he's the main center in Phoenix, and he's been putting up decent numbers since he's gotten there. But for the reasons that I got to stand by what I just said, and I have to take the upside on Clingan.
Yes, sir.
So I had a couple more guys too. So the other guy that I'm targeting in a couple leagues is Jalen Smith from Chicago. I think that if Vooch gets traded, he's kind of the next man up there at center. They did just pick up what's that guy's name from the Spurs? They picked up
Zach Collins.
Zach Collins, right? They picked up Zach Collins. So we'll see if Vooch gets traded, there might be some sort of timeshare between Smith and Collins. But I do like Smith as a little better of a fantasy option there, just because I think he puts up more stats. He's another guy that is one of those guys that blocks shots, and he can shoot and he can score and he can rebound. So he'll shoot a high percentage. So he'll definitely have value if he gets minutes. And even in the limited minutes that he plays now behind Vooch, he actually produces decent value. So I'm hoping if he gets to 25 minutes a night, he could be a really valuable piece to your team. And then
That's a great call. That's a great call.
The third guy that who's been playing well recently and might not be as much of a trade deadline. There might be not as many trade deadline implications for this guy, but I just think his role will expand as the season unfolds. Is Keon Johnson from the Nets? Mm-hmm. He's kind of taken on a pretty high usage role over there over the last week or two, and they have a lot of guys they're trying to figure out who their guys are, right? Who are the guys that are going to be a part of their future. And I think they might have found something with Keon Johnson. He's a really good scorer. He's actually a pretty good passer. He can get a few steals here and there. So I think he's a guy that's better suited for leagues that don't penalize missed shots as much, because he's not a super efficient player. But I think if you're in a league that is just more relying on guys that can score the ball and pick up stats, he's a good addition for you. But if you're in one of those leagues that you want guys that are a little more efficient, probably want to look towards Jalen Smith or Clingan or some of the guys that you mentioned, because they might have a little more efficiency than Keon.
Yeah, but we needed a non-center pick in the rotation.
Right.
We picked a lot of centers. I got another non-center. It's actually Rob Dillingham. He's up to like 25 minutes a game, 20 to 25 minutes a game in the last 10 games. And his fantasy output's actually been really good during that time. And I think slowly the T-Wolves are just kind of realizing he's like better than all the other guards they have. So his minutes are just going crazy. His fantasy output and usage has been really good alongside that, because they have no other offensive creators. Right. So
and DiVincenzo, he's hurt for a little bit too. So that
exactly.
might be part of the reason why he's getting a little more run there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then also, like, if you're in a keeper league, that's a guy you can look at. Like, if he just like blows up for the rest of the year, you can keep him. And And then kind of like a sneakier one. This is like pending a Jimmy Butler trade, but over the last like 5 games, Terry Rozier's been like off the bench, right? But he's been scoring 15 points a game. He's like 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and his fantasy output's been pretty good. In a world where Jimmy gets traded for like not that much in return, if Rozier's just like a little bit more efficient and scores a little bit more, like he's gonna go up to being like a 25 to 26 fantasy points per game guy versus the waiver wire guy he is now. So I kind of like that long term. And I can't see Jimmy Butler coming back anytime soon. We'll just say that. So yeah.
Yeah, Rozier's got some off the court issues, but
Yeah.
he's figuring that out and can get back to producing because he's been a really good player the last few years, but it sort of dropped off this year a little bit.
Oh, is that the betting? Is it the betting rumors?
Yeah.
No, he got cleared, right? They cleared his name, right?
Oh,
Did
did
they
they?
clear?
Yeah, I think he's been playing. I think he's been playing.
He's been playing. Oh, I did that. Yeah. So they just fully like just clear all of that. Was there some sort of mistake or something?
I think so.
I missed that.
Damn, now I'm kind of curious.
No, you might be right. You might be right. I just missed that.
Because he's been hooping.
He's definitely been playing.
Yeah.
Another guy I think is fun on the Fed watch. No, this guy's not a Fed watch at all.
That's crazy. You're about to give us a crazy. You're about to give us a
no. I wasn't even gonna go crazy with it, but
you're about to say something insane.
No. It's a Monday. We're gonna be respectful on the 71st episode. I think there's a lot of these guys that I think Jason you pointed out with Keon Johnson, where they have this kind of boom or bust depending on the day. So if you are some sort of sicko that is paying attention to who's in and out of every lineup. A guy that I really like, he's a veteran for Detroit, Malik Beasley, has the ability to just light up the scoreboard. This season he's averaging 16 and 3 and 2 assists and a steal. And that's upticked a little bit of late. Who knows if Jaden Ivey comes back in your fantasy playoffs, if that's, a situation that you want to continue to have. But if you are in a situation where I actually don't know his efficiency based on these standings, but if you need 3-pointers, if you need like scoring from a shooting guard position, he's somebody that I think is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, it's a good call. He can shoot. He was for a while there. He was one of the leaders in three-pointers made. I think he might have fallen off that pace a little, but he was off to a great start shooting the ball.
Definitely.
I have a couple more.
You might get moved too.
If I can. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say he might get moved too, so he could get a bigger role.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
Not that he's got a small role right now, but
yeah. Another guy that I like is Jose Alvarado. I actually picked him up in a couple leagues. We just had unfortunately DeJounte Murray go out. Yeah. So I think that we'll have. I don't know if Alvarado will come in and be the starter there. They might move CJ McCollum to the point guard and start Hawkins or someone else at shooting guard. But I think he'll get a lot of minutes whether he's starting or not, and he kind of racks up assists and some of those harder categories to find assists. Gets a lot of steals, can score a little bit. So I think he gives you a good diversified production. In some categories that might be a little more difficult to find, especially on the waiver wire.
I like that pull, especially. I was actually looking a bit. I've had him a couple times this season with Brandon Boston. He's been very up and down.
Yeah.
But if one of the theories that has seemed to be the case over the fantasy years, and maybe this shifts a little bit, but keep throwing out players, is you kind of get your first wave of waiver wire guys that you didn't draft, but you want to pick up. And then you have the first couple of weeks, you're like, oh, I don't know if I like this guy, I don't know. And then it feels like around like November, about a month in, you have your second wave of, okay, I want this guy. And then this is the stretch run of the season where every once in a while some new guy pops up and they find their stride in the middle of the season. So to your point, it'll be interesting to see if you get a shot at a guy like Jose Alvarado or Brandon Boston or whoever the case may be.
Absolutely.
I think Alvarado's a great shot too. Unfortunate injury situation, obviously, but
so sad.
Yeah. Honestly, nightmare situation. What a top two
New Orleans, yeah.
But
I want to give you a shout out, Jason, because I don't know if you maintained it, but I think when you found out about the Jalen Johnson injury, and obviously a huge loss to you, I'm assuming you're going to keep him because forever how much you drafted him for. But I think you immediately went and picked up an Atlanta Hawk. And I don't know if you remember who you picked up, but was it DeAndre Hunter? Did you find somebody to replace him?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did pick up DeAndre Hunter, who I have dropped to pick up another guy we've talked about tonight, Jalen Smith. But
Nice.
yeah, I mean that's kind of that's
That's
what
funny.
that's I'm always kind of tracking, especially if one of your guys from your team goes down, you're kind of thinking, all right, how can I kind of make this injury not hurt quite as bad? And DeAndre Hunter was out there, and I like him. There's our league. It's not there. It's not super like there aren't a ton of really good guys on the wire, but there are enough kind of diamonds in the rough that I sometimes have trouble. Like, Nick Richards is a great example. Like, I like him. I think he's going to be a really solid fantasy guy, but you just have to make those hard decisions sometimes. And I like to chase upside rather than just guys that are steady producers on my last couple bench spots, because I'm rotating those guys through most likely anyway. So if they don't pan out, I'll just move along. But yeah, I picked up DeAndre Hunter because I was like, he's going to get more run, he's going to get more opportunity. And I think I dropped him, and I think someone picked him up pretty quick right after that.
Fair enough.
And he's been good this year. He's been good this year too.
Yeah, he scores. He can score the rock.
Yeah.
He scores. He's a little inefficient, I feel like, is where his fantasy value goes down.
Yeah,
depending on what league you're in.
Inefficient and unfortunately doesn't do a ton else. Like he'll get you 20 a game. He'll score 20 a game, and you're like, dang, he must be doing really well. And he'll get like 1 rebound and 1 assist. And you're like, all right, he is purely just looking to score.
Yeah. Just score the rock. Yeah, that's so real. He's averaging 19 points per game this year and 4 boards, and then like
very efficient afterwards. Too, right?
See an efficient speed.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he's shooting really well.
Did he shoot? I didn't think his percentage was that high, but it could be wrong.
Small forward, power forward as well. Like, I feel like if you can get a guy to fill that forward slot, you're golden, because that's just such a hard slot. I feel like that's the hardest slot to find in our leagues.
Yeah, he's shooting 46% from the field and 39% from 3. So it's like,
oh wow, that's good.
That's pretty solid. Good, yeah.
For that many points a game, that's solid.
Very good.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, it's like the reverse. Like, Jalen Green scores like 24 points, or I would like not even that much, but like 20 points per game. But it's like the most inefficient like for fantasy ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Like in 10-team leagues, Jalen Green's barely rosterable.
Oh,
do you guys want to talk about? Do you guys want to talk about some of your positive and negative hits and misses from the season so far? I mean, they can be players or draft picks that you had that you either hit or missed on.
Well, honestly, I feel like this part we can be informed by. Do you remember our draft that we did during that? So for the viewers, during that episode, we put all those players. We drafted the top 30 between us 3, and we put all of those players on each of our teams in a 3-person roto league, and Jason is a roto category league, right? And Jason is slamming us. Oh yeah, it's not even roto. I'm tweaking. Just categories.
Yeah, we're doing categories. Jason is winning.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Jason is winning pretty convincingly in every single category for the most part.
Yeah, this is actually slamming, I'm not gonna lie.
And I think we'll just go down the roster of players again. All these teams are stacked because we just drafted the best players. But Jason, the team that you drafted, and then obviously we can go back into our specific fantasy team in terms of successes. I picked up in our other league some drafts that I thought were fantastic or waiver wire pickups. But Jason, your team in the one that we did was Shea, Halliburton, Paolo, Sabonis, Wemby, Trae Young, Siakam, Brunson, Bam, and Anthony Edwards. Just overall a very, very well balanced team. And I think with Wemby and Sabonis and Shea, just crazy value there.
How did I get all 3 of those guys? Damn.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Also pretty healthy team. I mean, outside of the major missed time out of Paolo.
Right.
Pretty healthy team all around, which is always huge for fantasy. I mean, it's probably the single most important thing when drafting a high-end fantasy player, right? So
Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
compare that with your team, Max, and you have a ton of injuries on your squad. You know,
yeah,
you got LaMelo, who's been missed a ton of games. Jimmy
Yeah.
Chet.
missed a ton of games.
Or no, that
And
was
Chet too.
Tony as
No,
Chet.
you don't have Chet.
Tony as Chet.
I have Chet.
Yeah, but and then
Oh, Jimmy Butler's suspended. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I did
Ja
like
Morant.
my Cade pull. I was pretty like Cade,
Oh, he's
James
been
That was a
great.
great
Harden.
poll. Yeah.
Yeah, Cade, Harden, Davis, and I mean Davis, Jokic, Giannis is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, even with that, just all my injuries have been a little tough. But
Um, yeah. And as for mine, I mean, I pulled Chet. Sengun is currently out. Scotty Barnes missed a ton of time. I pulled Embiid. Lowry Markkinen, Jason, you fleeced me in the middle of the season, and he has been absolutely atrocious this year compared to last year. And Luka's missed so much time. And so yeah, my team has been pretty down and out, unfortunately. But that's how it goes, I suppose.
Laurie is also just like I feel like he's not that bad. Like it's like situationally, like I think he's just like checked out. Like they suck. Like Will Hardy just trots out these just non-passing guards, and like Laurie Markin is just sitting in the corner all game. You know,
Yeah,
like even Keontae George, who's supposed to be a passing guard, just plays 32 minutes a game and has like average like 5 assists a game.
yeah, I mean, you got to wonder if they're going to do something with the Jazz if they're going to like try to send him to a contender, because clearly they got to shake some things up there.
Yeah, it's kind of wild because he's supposedly untouchable. They're never going to trade him, but then
Right.
like what's the plan there? Because then they rest him half the year because they're tanking, and then but they still won't move. Some of their guys that they could get value from. I get it. He's young and a good contract and a good player, but it's just I mean it seems at some point you gotta make a decision one way or another there.
Absolutely.
I still say his
Uh,
value is never going to be as high as it was last offseason, right? Like the moment he signed that contract, his value goes down because it's
Yeah.
like a 4 year, big 4 year guaranteed contract, and
mhm.
I don't know. And also
Right.
like or 5 years. Did he get 5 years? Or no, he renegotiated too. So like yeah. Anyways, he got a lot of money. We'll just say that because he renegotiated his salary so he could get more money this year, which not a lot of teams could have done. Anyways, kind of a messy situation in Utah.
Absolutely.
Um, any good
Yeah.
call? I do remember some good calls from our preseason pod. One of them
Yeah.
being the ever so controversial Jalen Johnson, which Jason was actually that was the first call that you made, and that was I mean a home run until he got hurt. So
Yeah, that would hurt.
yeah,
And you just kept him.
Yeah. I'll keep it. I'll keep him for sure.
He's
in a
locked
keeper
in.
league, yeah, in a keeper
Yeah,
league,
in a keeper
yeah.
league for sure. I mean, the only thing that is, I'm not worried necessarily, but he missed a large portion of last year too with an injury. He's out again, and they were both, just kind of freak injuries. But it does kind of suck that his two breakout years, he missed large chunks of both of those seasons, and I fully think he'll rebound, but man, it's just like the dude's so fun to watch. He was having such a good year. That team was actually playing pretty well.
With
And
him.
then, I watch a lot of their games just because they're fun to watch. I mean, him and Trey Young have this crazy chemistry. It's crazy. Since he's gone down, you can see like Trey Young's performance has dropped like pretty substantially just because he, relies on Johnson to take some of that load, space the floor, and all that. So it's just a shame all around. But that's unfortunately the reality of the NBA and fantasy is you just lose guys. We just saw it with DeJounte Murray too. So just tough, but it's always really one of the worst things when you have a guy that you love watching and then all of a sudden he's done for the year.
Yeah, and there's nothing to control about that too. Jason, if you're worried about his injury history, let me know. I'm happy to trade for him. next year.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
No, Jason really wants Jeremy Sochan back.
Yeah.
If I'm still in the league next year, we'll see.
Yeah. Who were some other good pulls that we had?
Trying to remember. I sent you guys
Max,
a
I think
list
you had a
actually.
couple good pulls.
I went back and looked up the polls because I was feeling a little petty.
I don't remember who had this one, but I know we had RJ. We were talking about RJ. He's been really good for fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, for fantasy and in real life too. He's taken a leap. So that was a good pull on our part.
That might have been both of y'all. Giddy was Anthony, I think, if I remember correctly. I said Desmond Bain, which I'm pretty hyped about.
He's been unreal.
He's been unreal. Someone when y'all said Mark. Yeah, he did. Did he just get hurt?
Yeah, so he's going to be. Well, I don't know if he just got hurt, but they just said he's going to be out for at least a week or two.
Tough. As always, as every Grizzlies player ever. One of you guys said Mark Williams has been absolutely
amazing. Yeah,
it's great pull.
Yeah. He's been so good. There were some guys I went back into this past year's like draft, and some guys that I thought were fantastic drafts were and I don't know if either of you guys like drafted these guys or they ended up on your team, but obviously Jason, that Dyson Daniels draft for $1 was fantastic pull, the Great Barrier Thief. You ended up getting Trey Murphy. Unfortunately, Max, you did draft him, but
I drafted him. I held him to the day that he came back, or like I dropped him the day before he came back, or like they announced he was going to come back, and Jason jumped right all over that, man.
You also drafted Norman Powell for $1, which was another fantastic draft at the time.
Him and Draymond for $1 probably saved my season, honestly.
No, for real. Yeah, you drafted Draymond
for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other quick guys I want to hear what people have to say. Hero was only $5 in our league. Zach LaVine was only $4. PJ Washington's been great at $5. John Collins at $1. Westbrook absolutely kicking ass at $4. Josh Hart somehow got drafted for $3. I'll shout out Chris Paul drafted for $1, and he's been amazing. Goga was drafted for $1, and Jakob Poeltl for $4. So a bunch of good. I mean, it just goes to show. Spend your money, in my opinion, spend your money early on, get the, understood great players, but there's always value if you just know where to look for it.
Okay, I don't feel bad for missing on Zach LaVine, like Zach LaVine for $4. Like when I don't draft a guy like that, I'm not kicking myself. Like, how was I supposed to know he's going to like shoot 40, 50, 90 this year?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely a hindsight call there.
Who are the guys that you wish you had on your squad? Are there one or two guys that kind of given where they were drafted or how much people paid for them? Maybe
Amen Thompson. Amen Thompson.
Yeah.
That was one of the guys I was going to say. He is insane.
Oh my God.
And at the time, it kind of felt like an overpay, right? Because how much was he drafted? Wasn't he drafted?
He got kept. He got kept for $10.
Kept for like
14 or no, it's like 10. I think it's 10. Yeah, you're right.
Oh man, dude, that literally keeps me up at night, man.
But that's a guy that's going to be, he's going to be saved for years to come because we were talking about this the other day, Max. Like he could be a $40 player at least right now. I mean, he's been
last 30 days 40 fantasy points a game.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
He doesn't get hurt too. He like plays all the time. It's kind of nice. I mean, he did get hurt a little bit last season, but
he's still got upside too. I don't think he's reached his ceiling.
Oh, totally agree. This is the worst he'll ever be.
Yeah.
Scary to think about.
Yeah, great pull. I mean, Max and I were talking about this on the podcast last night or yesterday about between him and Sengun. You don't want to split them up, but like who's the better player? Who could be the better player by the end of this year or next year?
I mean, it's at the beginning of the season, I would have said, Sengun, no question about it. But now I think I'd probably go Amen. I mean, just what he does on the defensive end too. And that, that is maybe Sengun's downfall is defensively. But Amen, I mean, both the Thompson brothers are just menaces on defense. I mean, they it seems like they're guarding the whole team when they're out there. And then, to be able to produce across the board like he does, I think he's, I don't want to go crazy, but he's a top level asset in the NBA in my mind.
I totally agree. him and his brother are like this. I've said this so many times in the podcast. I'm like repeating myself, but they're like this different mold of like just like offensively. It's like a Josh Hart adjacent player, but it's all athleticism. So they're able to
Yeah.
use it in so many different ways. Like they're a next gen energy player. And like
Yeah.
it is insane to think about. Like no flame to Jalen Green, but like for half the season he was shooting under 40%, and they were the second seed in the West. Like Şengün was really good too, but like Şengün's like a fringe all-star. And like at some point, like I think guys like Amen Thompson, like and his brother raise kind of your floor as a whole. Like they're just winning, they win every 50-50 ball, they play better defense than you. They're cutting more than you, they're better passers than you, etc. You know, so it's like tough to deal with.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's some of that. Obviously, it does show up on the in the box score because they're especially in men, they're fantasy monsters. But I think a lot of their value just,
Doesn't
like to
show
your
up. I
point,
totally
it doesn't
agree.
show up. It's defense, it's help defense, it's loose balls, it's just athleticism to make plays. Like all that stuff is just kind of, it adds a ton of value to your team, but you don't necessarily, if you don't watch the games, you might not be seeing that if you're just looking at the stat lines.
I don't have a historic comp for them. I don't have a historic comp for them at all.
I mean, this is a crazy over, but Scottie Pippen in a way, like amazing defender
Yeah.
Yeah.
and could facilitate.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
known as a shooter. Obviously, these guys are not Scottie Pippen, but like his ability to impact the game in so many different ways.
That's a great comp. That's an excellent comp.
Scottie Pippen though, not that bad of a 3-point shooter, by the way.
Was he not?
Yeah. Actually,
I
for his
guess
time, quite a good 3-point shooter for his time.
but he doesn't appear to be a shooter. You know what I mean? I guess it's more
100%.
like where.
But you know he's taking like 5.5 a game during the Bulls' second 3-point.
Wow,
For that
that's
era is
crazy.
like a lot.
That is very impressive.
But like outside of that, I totally agree with the comp. I actually think it's a very good comp.
I'm looking for other guys that were like
Yeah, I have no.
great.
I'm literally blinking out.
Great players. I wish we had like a list of great waiver wire, also like great waiver wire guys that could have been picked up. Or were
Here's
picked
one
up.
that wasn't I think he was at a few bucks. Josh Hart. I mean, he was.
Oh yeah.
He's been another just top level fantasy player this year, and you could get him for very cheap. And he plays a ton of minutes, which we all should have saw coming. But man, he just fills up the stat sheet, kind of similar to the Thompson twins in that he'll get. I mean, he'll get like rebounds, but he also gets steals and blocks and assists and points. I mean, he's been just absolutely incredible this year. And you could have had him in the last couple of rounds of your draft, or you could have had him for a few bucks.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in maybe our league, we've kind of figured this out and worked around it, but there's this element of I'm looking for a guy that scores a lot of points, and for whatever reason, Josh Hart kind of flew under the radar in that sense. And what is he averaging, like 12, 13 points a game? But it's everything else that gets in those minutes, which is why people should watch the games early on, just see how they're being impacted early on in the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely think, not so much in our leagues, but there are definitely leagues that I've played in where it's, a guy's got to be averaging 20 plus like points to be a valuable fantasy asset, and that's just not the case, right? And we talked about Jalen Green earlier, and he's a good example of that. I mean, the dude averages a ton of points, but just doesn't do it efficiently. He doesn't he doesn't have peripheral stats to kind of supplement his game, and those guys they don't have the same sort of value as some of these other guys that aren't getting you a ton of minus points for missing a ton of shots or turning the ball over a lot, in addition to also producing other stats.
That's a really good point. Like someone like that jumps off the page for like that, like is like literally like a comp that I had in my mind is like Jeremy Sochan in comparison to Jalen Green. If I remember correctly, Jalen Green is owned in more leagues. And
100%, yeah.
In my
definitely.
mind, like no flame Jalen Green, like Jeremy. So Jalen Green's rostered in 96% of leagues. Like Jeremy Sochan is
Wow.
averaging four more fantasy points a game, and he's averaging 20% of leagues. So
Right.
like, it's also maybe I'm just roasting people's ball knowledge. I don't know what my point is. But
Um,
like, yeah.
Another one I liked a lot, and I think Jason, you have him now, is Khalil Ware.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
just,
yeah, pick
I
him
mean,
up. Gotta pick him up
very,
already.
yeah. Like if you haven't picked him up in a smaller league, just and if you're in a keeper league, you should do it now.
Yeah.
Just because him and Bam in that front court, especially with Jimmy Butler out, sky's the limit for this guy. Um,
Yeah,
Absolute
I'm
stud.
excited about him. He's got a ton of potential. And I think that the Heat are finally just saying, hey, like, you do your thing. Let's make it work with Bam. And
Yeah,
he's going to be, I think, a beast for years to come.
absolutely.
Are there any guys that you guys are targeting since both you guys are kind of fringe playoff teams? Are there guys that you're looking at for next year or as keepers, either on your team currently or potentially on the wire that you might pick up just as a dart throw for next year?
Mm,
Dillingham, I mentioned already.
Yeah.
And then Mike McCain, if McCain's like on your
Oh,
waiver
good.
wire
Yeah,
because he's
good call.
injured, stash him. Trying to think. I mean, I had Lively, who I felt great about like 48 hours ago. Which is kind of tough. But I don't know. Outside of that, I'm not really sure. Use Misi, I think is kind of fun because I don't really see them buying on a center when you have him in place. So I think he's just going to keep getting a lot of minutes for the next few years.
yeah.
I don't think he's like that good in the interim, but like it's like he's more of like a keep an eye on. Like I don't know if I would keep him 100%, but like I don't know.
Yeah, monitor that situation.
To
Yeah,
that
monitor that
point,
situation for sure.
yeah, fully to that point. Like I just have a bunch of keep an eye on guys that I feel like they're just above waiver wire. But Scoot Henderson, if he can turn into something, he's been playing pretty well recently. Devin Vassell, Jaime Jaquez. I told Max this early on in the season. I really like Aaron Wiggins on the Thunder. I think he has just some it factor that I haven't been able to kind of place. And then also PJ Washington, just pretty consistent double threat. But to that point, I think the big thing here is if you are in a position where you're not going to make the playoffs, you're not worried about a league where you get relegated. If anybody else that listens to this podcast happens to also be in a league where there's relegation, which I guess we can talk more about why we did that. I think you just kind of, to your point, Jason, you're just looking for guys that are young, that have a chance to, if you can get a good 10 game stretch going, why not take a chance on that guy and see if he's going to be on the team next year and young second, third year guy. Absolutely. Get a lot of
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, definitely. A guy that I really like, I think you actually just picked him up today, Max, is Buzelis. I think
Mm,
he's got actually some potential this year to produce. I think if the Bulls, I mean, they already traded Levine. If they move a couple more pieces, but even if they don't, he might be in for a decent role there. And I do believe that they everything I've heard out of their, following them a little bit is that they believe in him as kind of a core piece of their future, and I think they want to see what he has this year. So I think he's going to get some run this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's locked into a starting role starting next year. And he's still young, and he's shown flashes of a pretty high level across the board production. So I think he's a really good a little bit deeper stash for some folks out there that are looking for some upside.
I agree. I just picked him up. Um, the thing is, there's some stuff that's like on the trade front. Like I thought I would assume it was like a really good waiver wire guy. Like
Yeah,
I came into this podcast expecting to
good
bring him
take.
up and then like the issue is the Bulls, I feel like just added Trey Jones to this already a lot of things going on in the backcourt. Like don't love it, So like we'll see. We'll see how the trades keep moving. But I think that he might be a guy to keep an eye on. Another interesting one was, funnily enough, Spencer Dinwiddie. Um,
mm,
I think Jason Kidd has like a man crush on this guy, and he plays like 30 minutes a game, and it's like kind of like I don't think he's that good, but he like gets the job done, you know. And with no Luka, he's about to get a ton of minutes because I don't really see them fortifying. Because Dinwiddie kind of fulfills this little bit of like wing ball handler slot that Luka plays, right? And Dinwiddie is he's about to play like 25 minutes a game in this role. And historically, if Dinwiddie gets that type of minutes, he's like not that bad in fantasy.
Is there a worse real life drop off than Luka Doncic or Spencer Dinwiddie though? I mean, man, that just hurts to even say.
That's gross. Yeah. God, it is crazy because Dinwiddie's already playing like 24 minutes a game or something.
Yeah, he was.
That is crazy.
I guess that was also for this year, not for next year. Sorry. I just came across him.
Yeah, another guy too that I like. We talked about the Jazz a little bit earlier. I think that Isaiah Collier as more of a future guy could be a solid fantasy player. He is a pretty elite assist guy. So I think that if you're looking for that kind of production, he might be worth a grab. I mean, who knows what the Jazz will do, but there's a chance that they either trade some of their older players or rest some of their older players down the stretch. So he might get some more run over there.
And Collier, if it's a league where you have to pay a lot more to keep a guy, like maybe it's just a guy you keep an eye on for the draft next year. But in general, I really because I can't imagine like a lot of things would have to go well this season for him to be worth that much in a draft next year. But like if you can keep a guy for the same price year on year, then like you're keeping Isaiah Collier, right? Like potentially.
Yeah.
But like definitely a guy you keep an eye on the draft because I mean it's the Jazz, man. They're not gonna they don't got that many good players. Jaden Ivey in a post-injury situation too. Also, probably floating around on a lot of people waiver wires. Just picked him up in our league actually. So, and he was good. He was good this season.
It's a good pickup. This is a very good pickup. Yeah.
All right.
Anything else?
I think that kind of wraps it up for me. I feel like we did a lot of fantasy.
Did a deep dive there.
Down the trades.
Wow.
Yeah. We give a comprehensive list of some evident sleepers and some non-evident sleepers.
Yeah, I think we went pretty deep this time. So, our fans in deeper leagues should be covered.
Yes, 100%. We got to give the people what they want. We did read that comment on the last one, who was like roasting us for giving Jalen Johnson as a sleeper. So that's why that we've been making jokes about that all podcast. But we appreciate the engagement. We hope this one, where I throw out Adam Bana just for the meme, just to be able to say I gave you a super deep sleeper. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Jason, thanks for hopping on, man.
Yeah, thanks guys. Wild time in the NBA. Glad I could jump on and talk about it with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys got anything else to add? Hell yeah. Well, folks, stay locked in, dude. Jason, again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your insight as always, just in general with NBA and with fantasy. Love you very much, brother. And shout out, guys. We got 2 more full days until the trade deadline is done. Noon on Thursday, so feels like there's going to be fireworks. So stay locked in, and as always, we'll be here spitting hoops. Holler at you.
There.
Goodbye.